Okay, so we want to pause for a minute to give you a sense of the scope of the pandemic in Australia. To date, COVID has caused 1,300, quote, recorded deaths in the entire country. Australia has 25 million people. Now, that 1,300 figure includes people who, quote, died with probable COVID. What does that mean? We have no idea. No one's ever defined it. In Alberta, Canada, and this might tell you something, the health minister just announced that anyone who stays home from any illness will be counted by the Canadian government as a COVID patient. Then she pretended she didn't say that because it's obviously insane, but it's on video, so we know that she did. In Australia, the government has adopted a similar standard. Anyone who leaves home apparently is also being counted as a COVID patient. Here's a man in Melbourne this Sunday who made the mistake of walking a block from his house.
He lives a block away.
Yeah, but he has no
so what do you mean?
He has no reason to be here. He doesn't have a valid reason to be out today. He wasn't wearing a face mask.
Hold on, he has a face mask in his pocket. He was just smoking a cigarette. He just came to get lunch with me.
And the reason I didn't have a mask on because I was having a cigarette. I've got 2 masks in my pocket. Like, what else do you want me to do?
Here's the interesting thing. That's obvious authoritarianism. It's terrifying that could happen in a civilized English-speaking country, in Australia of all places. But you'll notice the police never asked the man if he's been vaccinated. You'd think that'd be the first question you'd ask, because vaccination works, doesn't it? That's why it's mandatory, right? That's an important point because publicly Australia's leaders are still pretending that vaccination status matters. In New South Wales, again in eastern Australia, one official promised that the unvaccinated will be allowed to retain their freedoms.
The message to the unvaccinated is that you will not achieve any further freedom unless you get vaccinated. And a further and final message to regional New South Wales. There will be individuals in regional rural New South Wales who choose not to be vaccinated who will lose their freedoms on the 11th of October.
No more freedom if you don't get the vax. But they will arrest you for being outside smoking a cigarette a block from your home without a mask and not even ask you whether you've been vaccinated. So if vaccination status is that important as a health matter, wouldn't that be the first question you ask? But they didn't even bother. Meanwhile, in the same Australian state, New South Wales, officials are telling people that whether they are vaccinated or not, they're not allowed to go to church.
In the name of Jesus, lockdowns are over in the cities of New South Wales.
It's unclear what passage this pastor is preaching from, but it's not the public health order. His church, the Christ Embassy in Blacktown, is in lockdown. Hard lockdown. There was no QR code on the door, costing the organisation $5,000. Each of the 30 adult worshippers fined $1,000.
Whether it's a soccer match, whether it's a church service, it doesn't matter. You cannot gather as they did at Blacktown.
Oh, so you have to get vaccinated to have any of your freedoms, but even if you are vaccinated, you're not allowed to go to church. So what is the point of vaccination? Why did the federal government in Australia lock everybody down if there's no actual way to stop the lockdowns? And more to the point, why do they want open borders in Western Australia if closing the borders actually has kept the population safe? Well, they want open borders there for the same reason they want it here. In New South Wales, one official, the state's health officer, explained it out loud. Watch.
We will be looking at what contact tracing looks like in the New World Order. Yes, it will be pubs and clubs and other things if we have a positive case there.
The New World Order. She said it out loud. This is a really interesting story, what's happening in Australia and what it means for the rest of the Anglosphere, very much including us. And maybe that's why globally most media organizations have refused to cover it. That comment, the one you just saw about the New World Order, got barely any coverage at all. In fact, all the footage we showed you today is mostly being ignored in the United States. Why? Because it's possible what's happening in Australia might be instructive to us in the United States. In just 2 years, the Australian police went from raiding newsrooms to beating people in the streets. So maybe the lesson is things can change very quickly. One moment, the English-speaking world is mocking China for being dystopian and autocratic. The next moment, they're aping China and hunting people down who are 2 blocks from their own homes and smoking a cigarette. Hey, Sean Hannity here.